My town looks quiet on the surface. Church bells every Sunday morning. Pickup trucks parked outside rusted diners. The kind of place people drive through and forget. I was born here, raised here. I know every cracked sidewalk and every shortcut behind the old stores. What most people don't know is what's underneath us. Beneath our homes. Beneath the school. Beneath the church where my father used to pray. There are miles of abandoned mine tunnels. Old coal shafts dug by men who never made it back out. We don't call them haunted. We don't even call them abandoned. We just say they have rules. Rules everyone here learns young. Rules you don't question. Rules you follow if you want to come home. Because the people who ignore them aren't missing. They're still down there, listening. Everyone in town knows someone who never made it back from the mines. We don't talk about it like a ghost story. We don't whisper or laugh it off. We talk about it like weather. Something you respect, or it kills you. This is a mining town. Or at least, it used to be. The coal dried up decades ago, but the habits never left. Old men still gather at Murphy's bar every night, sitting on the same stools they've claimed for years. Their hands shake when they lift their glasses. Not from age, from memory. Behind the bar, there's a faded plaque on the wall. Rows of names. Dates carved into brass. Most of them ended underground. Collapsed shafts. Gas leaks. Fires that burned without flames. Some names have no dates at all. Just the word missing. When I was a kid, I used to ask my father about that plaque. Why some names didn't have an ending. He never answered directly. He'd just say, those ones didn't listen. Around here, that's all the explanation you get. There's an old saying everyone grows up hearing. No one remembers who started it. Don't go down there. Not as a warning. Not as a threat. Just a fact. People don't cross themselves when they say it. They don't lower their voices. They say it the same way you'd say, don't drive during a storm, don't touch a hot stove. I didn't plan on getting involved with the mines. Not really. But when you grow up in a place like this, the ground feels personal. I started doing maintenance work for the county. Inspection jobs. Old infrastructure. Historical documentation for sites they planned to seal permanently. The mines were part of that list. On paper, they were abandoned. Sealed entrances. Concrete barriers. Warning signs rusted beyond legibility. In reality, they were still breathing. I noticed it the first night I went out there alone. Just to check the fencing. The air near the old shaft felt wrong. Not cold. Not warm. Moving. A slow current brushing past my legs, like the earth itself was exhaling. I told myself it was pressure change. Temperature difference. Anything reasonable. That's what people like me do. We explain things so we don't have to feel them. But the wind didn't come from the trees. It came straight up from the ground. Late at night, when the town goes quiet, you can hear sounds carry farther than they should. Metal on metal. A slow, uneven knocking. Not rhythmic. Not random. Intentional. The first time I heard it, I stood there longer than I should have, waiting for it to repeat. It didn't. The dogs around town hate the mines. Every local knows that. They'll walk past abandoned houses without issue. They'll sleep through thunderstorms. But take them near a sealed shaft, and they lose their minds. Growling. Pulling at the leash. Staring at solid concrete like something is moving behind it. One night, a neighbor's dog broke free and ran straight to the old entrance. It barked until its throat gave out. They found it the next morning, curled up against the barrier, mud on its paws, facing the door. That's when I remembered something my father told me years ago. The mines don't wake up for everyone, he said. But when they do, they don't stop. The first thing I noticed was the smell. It wasn't strong, just enough to register. Damp earth, old metal, something faintly chemical like sulfur. I told myself it was normal. Old mines sweat. Anyone who's worked around them knows that. But the smell followed me. Not just near the entrance. Not just at night. Sometimes I'd catch it standing in my own driveway. A wet, underground scent that didn't belong above ground. Then there was the wind. It didn't behave like wind. It didn't come in gusts or patterns. It didn't respond to the trees. It came straight up from the sealed shaft, slow and steady, like breath through clenched teeth. The sound wasn't loud. It was careful, like something trying not to be heard. And every time I listened, it sounded closer. I started noticing things I hadn't before. Marks in the mud near the old fence. Human ones. They led toward the entrance, toward the concrete barrier. But there were never any coming back. At first, I assumed kids. Teenagers looking for a scare. Urban explorers chasing online views. That explanation worked until I realized something else. The footprints never overlapped. No hesitation marks. No pacing. Just a straight, confident walk into the ground. I documented everything. Photos, notes, timestamps. That was my job, after all. And if there was one thing I trusted more than my instincts, it was paperwork. Late at night, when the town went quiet, the noises came back. Metal tapping stone. Slow. Uneven. Sometimes it sounded like knocking. Other times like something being dragged. I never heard voices. Not clearly. Just shapes of sound. Patterns that almost became words before breaking apart again. I blamed stress. Long hours. Isolation. Too much caffeine. That's what you do when the alternative feels ridiculous. The dogs reacted before I did. Every time I passed the mine road, they stiffened. Ears flat. Whining low in their throats. One night, a local hound refused to leave its porch. It strained against the leash, staring at the dark hillside. Its owner laughed it off. Probably smelled a raccoon, he said. The dog kept watching the ground. Then came the rain. Heavy. Cold. It turned the dirt around the shaft into thick mud. The next morning, the footprints were back. More of them. Different sizes. Different depths. All leading in the same direction. None leading out. That was the first time. I felt something I couldn't explain away. Not fear. Recognition. Like realizing someone has been standing behind you for a long time. I told myself it was coincidence. Trespassers. Animals. Erosion. I repeated those words until they lost meaning. Because the mines weren't just reacting to people anymore. They were responding. The wind changed when I approached. The knocking stopped when I listened too closely. And just once when I stood still long enough. I felt the ground vibrate. Not collapse. Not movement. Pressure. Like something on the other side leaning back. Waiting. I didn't find the rules online. I didn't hear them from a campfire story or a drunk at the bar trying to scare a newcomer. I found them the way people in this town always have by accident. It was a weekday job on county time. One of those final inspections before the next round of sealing work. A crew was supposed to meet me out there, but the foreman called and said the truck broke down. Just take pictures, he told me. Don't go inside. We're not paying overtime if you get stuck. I promised him I wouldn't. I meant it. But the mine road had washed out, and I needed to get closer for the shots. The hillside was slick from rain, and the air smelled like wet pennies and rotten eggs. Sulfur. Earth. Old iron. The concrete barrier at the shaft entrance looked newer than everything around it, a blunt, ugly patch on an old wound. And someone had scratched into it. Not graffiti. Not names. Instructions. The letters were shallow, like they'd been carved with a nail or a broken blade. Some of the lines were filled with dirt, as if the words had been rubbed and rewritten over the years. A list. I stared at it longer than I should have. Because even before I could read it clearly, my body reacted. That cold, animal feeling. Like standing too close to the edge of a drop. Then I saw the second thing. A wooden board half buried in mud off to the side, under a piece of corrugated metal. It looked like it used to hang somewhere. Maybe a break room. Maybe the old mine office. The wood was swollen with water and stained dark, but the ink held. A title at the top: Mine Safety Rules. But the handwriting underneath wasn't official. It wasn't corporate. It wasn't OSHA. It was personal. A man writing fast, like he was afraid he wouldn't have time to finish. The first line made my stomach tighten. Rule 1: never go alone. Underneath, in smaller writing, the mines don't like single voices. I laughed once quietly. The way you do when something is too absurd to take seriously. But the laugh died in my throat because the wind shifted. And for a second, I could swear it carried a sound that matched me. Not an echo. A copy. I took photos of everything. The concrete. The board. Even the muddy ground where footprints had appeared the day before. Then I did what the foreman told me. I backed away. And I tried not to think about it. That night, I went to Murphy's bar. Not because I wanted to drink. Because I wanted to hear someone else say it out loud. Old miners sit in the corner booth like it's assigned seating. They don't talk much. They watch. They listen. I slid the photos across the table and asked the oldest one, a man named Wade, "What is this?" He didn't pick them up right away. He looked at my hands first, like he was counting fingers. Then he took the photos, studied them for a long time, and finally said, "You weren't supposed to see that." "I found it at the sealed shaft," I told him. Wade's jaw tightened. "Did you go in?" "No," I said too quickly. "No, I didn't." He held my stare like he could see through me. "Good," he said. "Because if you go in alone, the mind starts talking back." I tried to smile. I couldn't. Wade tapped the first rule with his finger. "Never go alone," he read. Then, quieter: "The mines don't like single voices." I waited for him to laugh. He didn't. Instead, he leaned closer and said something that made the hair on my arms rise. "Because if you're alone, it only has to imitate one of you. Scroll Rule 1: never go alone." Wade told me about a kid named Tommy Klein. Tommy wasn't from a bad family. He wasn't reckless in the usual way. He was the kind of boy who grew up watching documentaries and thinking he was smarter than local superstition. One summer, he posted online that he was going to prove the mine. Myths were fake. He went down with a flashlight and a GoPro. Alone. They found his car at the road turnout. They found his backpack by the fence. They found his footage. The first few minutes were normal. A narrow tunnel. Dripping water. His breathing loud in the mic. Then he stopped. You can hear it on the recording, a faint voice calling his name. Not far away. Not behind him. Right beside him. Tommy whispered, "Hello." And the voice answered. In his own tone. In his own cadence. Like it had learned him. The video ended with Tommy turning the camera toward the darkness and saying, "Wait, that's me." They never found him. But for weeks after, people heard a young man's voice near the sealed shaft, asking for help, saying he was lost. Sounding just like Tommy. Scroll rule 2: if you hear knocking, do not answer. It's not asking for help. In mining towns, knocking means something. Sometimes it's a tool against rock. Sometimes it's a warning. Sometimes it's a man trapped somewhere, tapping so he doesn't go insane. That's why this rule is cruel. Because it weaponizes your instincts. Wade told me the knocking in those tunnels isn't a signal. It's bait. It learns what you are, he said. It learns what you'll do. The knocks don't follow a human rhythm. Not tap, 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 pause, tap. Not Morse. Not sauce. It's uneven. Like someone copying a pattern they don't understand. And if you answer even once, the mind marks you. Not in a supernatural, glowing way. In a practical way. It learns the sound you make when you respond. It learns the pitch of your voice. It learns what you call back with. There was a rescue crew years ago that went down after a collapse. They were trained. Experienced. They found an old pocket of air where they heard knocking from behind a wall. A young rescuer named Mark said, "Hold on, stay with us." He yelled it into the crack, and for a second everything went quiet. Then the wall knocked back. 3 sharp hits. A pause. 2 slow hits. Like it was answering. Mark leaned in again and shouted, "We're here!" Behind him, in the tunnel, a voice whispered, perfectly calm, "We're here." Not from the radio. From the dark. The crew ran. They made it out. But Mark didn't speak for days after. When he finally did, he said, it wasn't trapped. It was practicing. Rule 3: never whistle underground. This rule sounds stupid until you understand the tunnels. Sound travels differently down there. A whisper can ride the air for hundreds of feet. A cough can bounce and return from a direction you can't map. And a whistle is bright, sharp, easy to track. Old miners used to whistle to calm themselves, to keep fear out of their throat. But in these mines, whistling is like ringing a dinner bell. Wade told me about a man named Jonah who worked the midnight shift in the final years before the mine closed. Jonah was a whistler. Always had been. He'd whistle gospel tunes, half remembering the notes. It was his way of staying awake. One night, deep in the 3rd tunnel, he heard another whistle answer him. Same melody. But wrong. The notes were off. Not like a human mistake, like an imitation. Jonah laughed and called out, "Very funny, fellas." No one answered. The second whistle came closer. Then a third. Then a fourth. Each time the melody improved, like whatever was copying him was learning. Jonah stopped whistling. So did the thing. For a long moment, there was only dripping water and Jonah's breathing. Then, right behind his ear, a perfect whistle. Clean. Confident. Too close to be possible. Jonah dropped his lantern and ran. He made it out of the mine, but he never whistled again. Years later, when the wind is right, people swear they can hear a hymn being whistled from under the hill. Perfectly in tune. Like someone finally got it right. Rule 4: if the tunnel feels warmer, turn back. Mines are cold. Even in summer, the deep tunnels stay chilled. That's why warm air down there is wrong. Warm air means a fire. Warm air means gas. Or something alive. Wade said this rule was added after an incident nobody likes to talk about. A group of trespassers went in during a heat wave. They wanted shelter. A cool place to drink. They found a tunnel that felt warmer than the rest. At first they liked it. Then they noticed the walls sweating. Not water. A thin film that smelled like old pennies and rot. They kept going anyway. The tunnel narrowed. The air thickened. Their flashlights started fogging at the edges like they were entering a room with breath in it. Then the heat increased again. One of them joked, "Maybe there's a vent." That's when the sound started. A slow inhale. A pause. Then an exhale that made the loose dust on the ground ripple outward. Like a sleeping animal shifting in its den. They ran. Only one made it back to the entrance. He was barefoot. His shoes were gone. His skin was scraped raw like he'd been pulled across stone. He kept saying the same sentence over and over. It was warm because it was close. And when the sheriff asked, "Close to what?" the man looked at him with eyes that didn't focus and whispered close to its mouth. Rule 5: if you hear your name, run. This is the rule that made my hands shake when I read it. Because I'd already heard something like it. Not my full name. Not clearly. But a sound in the wind that leaned toward the shape of it. Wade didn't like talking about this rule. He kept his eyes on the bar top, tracing circles in spilled beer like he was trying to erase something. They used to think it was ghosts, he said. Men who died down there. Men who wanted company. Is it not? I asked. Wade's mouth tightened. It's worse, he said. Because it's not dead. He told me what the old-timers believe. When men died in the mines from collapse, from gas, from slow suffocation, their last moments weren't clean. They weren't brave. They were panic. They were prayers. They were the desperate need to be heard. The mine absorbed that. Not like a spirit. Like a sponge. It soaked up voices, fear, memory. And over time, something formed. A thing made of pressure and darkness, fed by the last thoughts of people who never got to leave. It isn't a ghost. It's what happens when a place learns hunger. It eats more than bodies. It eats what makes you you. Your habits, your voice, your memories. It tries them on like clothes. That's why you run when it says your name. Because it doesn't say it to scare you. It says it because it's already close enough to whisper. And if it can say your name, that means it has already been watching you long enough to learn it. Wade finally looked at me then. Has it said yours yet? He asked. I wanted to lie. I couldn't. I swallowed and said, not clearly. Wade nodded slowly, like that answer had its own meaning. Then you're still early, he said. And you need to stay that way. I went home that night with the photos still on my phone. The rules still burned into my mind. I told myself I wouldn't go back. I told myself the county would handle it. I told myself I was done. And I almost believed it, until I stepped onto my porch and smelled that damp, underground air again. Stronger than ever. As if the mine had followed me home. Then, from the dark somewhere beyond my yard, not loud, not dramatic, a careful voice breathed my first name. Perfectly. Like it had been practicing. The first rule to break wasn't broken by me. It was broken by Evan. Evan was new, mid-20s, recently transferred to county work after his mother died. Everyone in town knew about it. Cancer. Fast. Unfair. He didn't drink like the old miners. Didn't believe the stories. Said he grew up on science, not superstition. And when the calls started coming in, complaints about noise near the sealed shaft, he volunteered to check it out. I'll be quick, he said. I don't scare easy. I should have stopped him. Instead, I went with him. That's how it always starts. Not with curiosity. With politeness. The air was wrong the moment we stepped past the fence. Too still, like the night was holding its breath. Evan stopped halfway down the service path. Do you hear that? He asked. At first I didn't. Then I did. Crying. Soft. Broken. A woman's voice. Not loud. Not theatrical. Real. It drifted out of the hillside like mist. Evan's face drained of color. That's my mom, he said. I grabbed his arm hard enough to hurt. No, I said. That's not. She used to cry like that, he whispered. When she thought no one was listening. The rules flashed through my mind like warning lights. If you hear your name, run. If you hear knocking, don't answer. There wasn't a rule for this. Or maybe there was. And we were already breaking it. Evan took a step toward the entrance. The ground shifted under his boot. Not a collapse. A rearranging. The path we'd come down was no longer behind us. It curved. Bent. Like a hallway deciding where it wanted you to go. I turned on my flashlight. The beam cut through dust and steam, then stopped. Not faded. Stopped. Like it hit a surface my eyes couldn't see. The darkness ahead wasn't empty. It was dense. Packed. Evan called out, "Mom." The crying stopped. Immediately. Too clean. That's when the sound came from deeper inside the mine. Footsteps. Heavy. Slow. Not approaching. Positioning. The walls around us started to sweat. Not water. Something thicker. Warm. The tunnel breathed. In, out. The heat rose fast. Evan, I said. We're leaving now. He nodded, but he was shaking. We moved back the way we thought we'd come. The tunnel narrowed, then widened, then split. Every turn looked familiar. Every turn was wrong. The mine wasn't collapsing. It was reorganizing. The flashlight flickered. When it steadied, I saw something move at the edge of the beam. Not a shape. A pressure. Like stone bending without cracking. Evan screamed. Something brushed his shoulder. Not claws. Not hands. Weight. Like the wall had leaned into him to see if he was solid. He dropped his light. Darkness swallowed it whole. In the dark, the voice returned. Clearer now. Closer. Evan, it said. Perfect. Not crying anymore. Calling. He ran. I ran after him. We didn't hear pursuit. No chase. No roar. Just the mine closing options behind us. Path sealing. Corners repeating. At one point, Evan stopped and laughed hysterically. It knows her, he said. It knows her voice. I didn't answer. Because something else had started copying me. My breathing. Right behind my ear. Slow. Careful. Matching. I shoved Evan forward and we broke through into moonlight. The entrance was wrong. Too narrow. Like it hadn't fully let us go. Evan collapsed in the mud, sobbing. Behind us, deep in the sealed darkness, something shifted its weight. Not disappointed. Patient. It didn't chase us. It waited. Like it knew the mine would finish the job for it. They sealed the entrance last year. Poured concrete. Put up warning signs. Chained the fence and posted deputies for a week. Until everyone decided it was over. That's how this town works. It absorbs bad stories the way the mines absorb sound. Evan quit 2 days after we got out. No explanation. No goodbye. People said it was grief. Said the pressure finally caught up to him. Said young men break sometimes. No one said the other thing. Because saying it gives it shape. The county labeled my report unsubstantiated. The sounds became settling. The smell became natural gas. Paperwork closed the case. Life moved on. The plaque at Murphy's bar is still there. Names fading. The word missing still etched in brass. Church bells still ring on Sundays. Kids still cut across the old hillside like it's just another shortcut. I tried to move on too. I left my childhood house. Stopped taking jobs near the mine road. I followed the rules the way you follow superstition. Carefully, but quietly. For a while, it felt like enough. Then the wind came back. Sometimes it carries the smell of damp earth and sulfur, even when the air is dry. Sometimes I wake up with dirt under my fingernails, like I've been digging in my sleep. And sometimes late at night, when my house is quiet, I hear knocking from beneath my bedroom floor. Not loud. Careful. Uneven. Like something practicing. I don't answer. I keep my breathing shallow. I stare at the ceiling and count the seconds between taps. Because I remember the rules. Never go alone. Don't answer the knocking. Don't whistle. Run if you hear your name, and I follow them. Every single one. But last week, at 2:17 in the morning, the knocking stopped. A voice drifted up through the floorboards, soft as breath. It didn't sound angry. It didn't sound rushed. It sounded patient. It said my name. Perfectly. Like it had been saying it for a long time. I didn't answer. I stayed perfectly still until morning light filled the room. And when I finally got up, I found mud on my hallway tiles. One set of footprints, leading toward my front door. None leading out.